Halloween has always belonged to the dead. And if you want the truth, no one knows their stories better than the ones who keep their gates. Tonight, we bring you 5 real tales from the graveyard caretakers. These are the kinds of stories whispered after midnight, when the fog rises, the crows circle, and the ground itself starts to breathe. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our Halloween specials coming through September and October. And if you're brave enough for more, check out our Halloween playlist in the description below. Welcome to Whispers After Dark, where the shadows speak and the night listens. Turn off the lights, silence the room, and settle in. The cemetery gates are about to open. The Midnight Watch. Do you do dares? Everyone does, once or twice. It's part of being young, thinking you can step anywhere and the world will step aside. Some dares are harmless. A handful of candy, a plastic mask, a ghost story hissed through a flashlight beam until your nerves fray. But there are other dares. The kind that take root in a place like this. The kind that don't end when the laughter does. You couldn't pay me enough to walk this ground on Halloween night. I may keep the grass trim, set the fallen stones back on their bases, oil the hinges on the iron gate. But when October drains the light, I lock the gate and I keep away. I've seen too much, heard too much. 30 years as groundskeeper will teach a man the shape of silence and what it hides. Kids still slip in, year after year. They drink, they brag, they sit on cold marble and call to the dark like it owes them a favor. Most of the time I run them out with a lantern and a lecture. No harm done. But a couple of years ago there was one I couldn't chase away. One who didn't make it back. Her name was Emily. Pretty girl, 17 or thereabout. Lived louder online than in the daylight, from what I gathered later. The dare had a name, the Midnight Watch. Sit out Halloween night at a marked grave and live stream the whole thing. If you lasted till dawn, the spirits would show themselves, so the story went. She wanted to be famous. She said so on camera. The footage from the live stream was everywhere by morning. I didn't see it live, but I watched it later against my better judgment. Call it maudlin curiosity if you must. At first, it was just Emily, smiling into her phone, laughing at the comments as if she owned the night. "I'm not scared," she told me. She tore open a granola bar, washed it down with a soft drink, swore she was alone and staying till sunrise. She went on like that for a while, past midnight, teasing, mocking the graves, daring the dead to answer. At one point, she even spoke the name of this cemetery out loud, bold as brass, and told her viewers someone ought to tell her parents if she didn't make it out. Then she laughed, sharp, careless, like it was all a joke. But that laugh was the last mistake she ever made. The fog shifted. At first, just a ripple at the edges of the screen, like breath on glass. Then it thickened, heavy as damp wool, rolling in slow, deliberate coils. It wrapped her ankles and swirled across the ground, and then it sank low and spread wide until it looked less like weather and more like a blanket being pulled tight across the graves. A blanket of death. The camera's little eye hunted for focus and caught the trees in the back corner where the old stones leaned as if eavesdropping. Something rose there, tall, thin, draped in funeral cloth the color of old bone, edges ragged like paper burned and blown out. Its lips were peeled into a grin too wide for a human mouth. The eyes, God help me, the eyes were sewn shut with thick black stitches, as if someone had forced them closed and the thread had never rotted. She blinked, looked at her screen. It stood behind her. Every blink brought it closer. First a pale blur at her back. Then beside her, shoulder to shoulder, the cloth hanging straight though there was wind enough to rattle dead leaves. She tried to joke again and her voice shook. In the comments, people typed stagecraft and filter and this is fake, but the sound under her words wasn't acting. That was breath starting to break. The ground softened where she sat. You could see it in the angle of the camera as it tilted, how the soil sagged, how the little weeds that love grave dirt seemed to lean toward her wrists. The fog erased the cemetery and the road and the world, and it was just Emily, the camera, and the thing beside her. A skeletal hand rose into frame, fingers too long, knuckles like knots in fence wire. The cloth didn't sway, the stitches didn't shift. In the tiny light of the screen, the grin widened, not because the lips moved, but because the skin pulled tighter, like something underneath was pressing its face up to hers. The last image caught half a face and all of the hand. The hand came down slow over the lens, and for a heartbeat, the glass saw between its bones, a glimpse of something like a hole in the fog, deep and dark and downward. Then the stream cut to black. I was through the gate at first light, dew on the grass, a trickle of cold air under the yew trees, the smell of wet iron and loam. The fog hadn't lifted yet. It lay low, stubborn, as if it remembered what it had done. I found her phone by the back corner where the ground dips and holds the cold. The screen was cracked, but still lit, little notifications marching by like gnats. Her scarf and her bag and her water bottle were set neat as if she'd folded her fear into them and put it away. Above them stood a headstone I know for a fact had been blank the week before, because I clear lichen from that row every Tuesday. Now a name was scratched into it, not carved, not clean, scraped deep with something sharp and stubborn, each letter gouged straight through the frost-black crust to the pale stone beneath. Emily. I called the police. They didn't laugh. Not once they stood where I stood and saw the slump of earth in front of that stone. The topsoil was thin there, and underneath was the kind that turns to paste when you dig too soon after rain. They asked where the fresh grave was on my ledger. I told them there wasn't one. They asked how long since anyone been buried in that corner. I told them years. Then they asked if I would help them dig since the grave was so close to the tree. I wish I'd refused, but I've always been the sort who goes along once the uniforms are here. We sank the blades in. The top foot fell away easy, dark clods collapsing with the sound of a wet book dropped on a table. Deeper down, the dirt went pale and gritty, the way it does when you're at ground that's been turned and settled long enough to forget who lay in it. My shovel rang off stone once, twice, then slid through a seam like a breath being drawn. The smell changed. Not rot. Rot is warm, a barnyard stink that climbs the back of your throat. This was old, cold, a dry dust that tasted like pennies and old teeth. Someone swore. Someone else said Jesus, the way men do when they're wishing a thing weren't what it is. Then the sergeant told us to stop a moment, and we all did, because there she was, a few feet down, curled in on herself like a figure in a medieval carving, hands close to the mouth, knees to the chest, as if she'd been packed tight by careful hands long, long ago. Only it hadn't been long. That's what undid me. She looked dried, yes. Skin gone taut and yellowed like paper dipped in tea. Hair brittle as straw. Lips drawn to thin lines that showed too much tooth. The stitches were there, thick and black, not rotten at all, tugging her eyelids shut bite by bite, as neat as a seamstress's work. But her clothes were last night's clothes. Sweatshirt smeared with dirt, leggings torn at the knee where the ground had taken hold, one shoe missing, the other tied double at the throat, like she'd meant to run. The coroner climbed down with a measured voice and gloved hands. The officers looked away. I didn't. I didn't, because someone had to witness the truth of what the dark had done. They bagged the body, and they took the phone, and they took the neat little pile of belongings, and they said the right words to each other in tones that meant nothing had a place to fit. Days later, the sergeant came back with the tests in his mouth like a stone, DNA, positive, family notified. The parents tried to have the video taken down. Who wouldn't? They wrote to platforms and threatened lawyers and begged strangers to stop sharing their daughter's last minutes for thrills. But the internet is a graveyard of its own. You can cut weeds back, but the roots remember. Every October, like clockwork, that stream claws its way up from under 1,000 clicks of dirt and goes around again, passed from phone to phone like a campfire story with proof attached. She always wanted to be famous. Now she is. People ask what I do different now. I don't chase anyone anymore, not on Halloween. You come through this gate that night, that choice is yours. I'll have locked it, but locks are for the living and those with bolt cutters. If you come prepared. Bring a name written down so someone knows what to scratch on stone if it comes to that. Bring a second pair of shoes for whoever has to walk out without you. Bring an answer for whoever stands at your shoulder when you blink. I won't be coming to fetch you. I won't be lighting a lantern to look for you in the low corners where the ground holds the cold. So take my advice. Don't come here on Halloween night. Don't do the dares. The air will smell like moss and bone, and the fog will crawl without touching the ground, and you'll think you're brave because the screen is watching. You know that Emily did, at least at first. But if you decide to ignore my advice and you ever find yourself staring at a headstone with your name carved into it, gouged in hurried letters that weren't there yesterday, if your breath starts to fog the glass and something tall and thin stands where the world used to be, and a hand you don't want to see comes down slow over the lens, and you feel the soil soften under your heels as if the ground has known you all along, don't look for a gate that isn't there. Don't look for the road that's folded itself away. And whatever you do, don't blink. But if you do, don't worry. I'll call the police. I'll even help them dig up your body. I'll make your parents a cup of coffee when they come to collect what's left. But what I won't do is chase you out of the cemetery on Halloween night. Not anymore. The Crows of Ashcroft Cemetery. Every year they come with their cameras, their flashlights, their big stupid grins. They think cemeteries are just stage sets for their little videos, places to chase shadows and scare each other while the internet laughs. They never read the sign at the gate. Big letters, black paint, nailed up with my own hands. Beware the crows. One night only. Halloween. Stay out. But they always ignore it. And I always have more bodies to bury the next week. This is what happened last Halloween. 4 boys this time. Local kids, though I didn't know their names till the police came later. They came laughing, shoving each other, tripods clattering, voices high with sugar and bravado. One carried a flashlight so bright it could strip the bark off a tree. Another toted a speaker, blasting horror sound effects like they were walking into a haunted house, not a graveyard. I watched from the caretaker's shed at the edge of the grounds. Always do. They never see me, not really. The camera catches only what it wants, and on Halloween, the lens doesn't favor the living. They started their live stream at the front gates. Introductions, fake screams, one of them flopping onto the gravel pretending to be a corpse. The chat numbers climbing, the comments rolling in. They thought they were stars. They thought the dark was theirs to toy with. Then the first crow landed. It perched on the bent iron cross above row 6, feathers glossy as oil, eyes like wet stone. The boys laughed at it, made jokes about omens, shouted at their viewers to clip that. Then another crow came, then 3 more, then 10. Their calls echoed sharp through the headstones, a jagged chorus that made the ground itself feel brittle. The boys kept filming. They thought it was gold. By midnight, the sky over Ashcroft Cemetery was black and alive. Hundreds of wings beat the air, each one sounding like a shovel slicing dirt. Crows swarmed the trees, the statues, the crooked stones, until the moon was gone behind them. The boys tried to keep the show going. Jokes, dares, forced laughs. But their voices were thinner now, straining against the sound of feathers and beaks. The crows don't wait long. The first one struck without warning, diving fast, talons slashing the boy with the flashlight. He screamed, dropped the light, and the beam rolled wild across the graves. Then they came as one, a wall of wings and claws and tearing beaks. The air turned frantic, shredded by feathers. The boys ran, but every step was smothered in black shapes, crows biting at their faces, clawing their throats, ripping hair, gouging eyes. The camera caught everything, shaking, falling, turning, as one boy clutched it to his chest and tried to run. His breathing was ragged, shrill with terror. The chat exploded with laughing emojis, question marks. Is this staged? But the sound wasn't staged. The sound was wet. By the time the camera fell, the lens pointed up at the sky, and the sky was nothing but wings. I came at dawn, always do. The crows were gone, silent as if they'd never been. The cemetery smelled of copper and feathers. The boys' gear was scattered. Tripod snapped, speaker split, the flashlight drowned in mud. Their bodies, what was left of them, lay in pieces across the graves. Not enough for 4 coffins, not enough for one. I called the police, like I always do. They came pale-faced, looking anywhere but down. They took their notes, made their reports, bagged what scraps could still be called human. They asked me what happened, but I only pointed at the sign. Beware the crows, one night only. Halloween, stay out. They nodded, but it won't matter. It never does. By next year, another pack of fools will come, their phones full of batteries, their channels hungry for views. They'll laugh at the warning, call it great atmosphere, maybe even pose by the sign for a thumbnail. And when the sky goes black with wings, they'll realize too late that the sign isn't a joke. It's a gravestone written early. The crows always come on Halloween, and I'll be here, shovel in hand, ready to put the pieces in the ground. The Cottage Among the Graves. Some cemeteries die twice. Once when the last mourner forgets the way, and again when the forest drags the stones beneath its roots. Out here, no birds sing after dusk. Only the wind moves, carrying voices that no longer have throats to speak. My name was Walter Finch once, though no one alive remembers it now. I was the groundskeeper here, and I kept watch until the day the earth took me. These days I do other work. I send out invitations. I make them look inviting, cozy, pretty little pumpkins and fall leaves and jet black ink. All it takes is the promise of a weekend away, a quaint, cozy cottage, a quiet retreat, a free honeymoon, rustic and romantic. People always answer. They can't help themselves, and once they arrive, the cemetery does the rest. This is the story of Emma and Blake. It was almost dusk when they pulled down that narrow road on Halloween night. The listing had promised lanterns, firewood, a stocked pantry. I made sure the cabin was just as promised and even lit a fire in the fireplace. The key was waiting under a grinning pumpkin on the porch, just as I left it. Cell service had died miles back, but they laughed at that too. 2 lovers alone in the woods, no world but each other. It's a shame, really, that they never thought to ask what woods they'd chosen. They were such a nice couple. The cabin creaked when they stepped inside. The boards sagged under their weight. The furnishings were simple and worn, but that's part of the charm, isn't it? Old things whispering their secrets. By twilight, they were roasting marshmallows, sipping wine, kissing like no one had ever lived before them. When Blake got up to take a shower, Emma found the journals on a low shelf. Ledgers bound in cracked leather, pages yellow as bone. She opened one, and the hearth guttered cold. Caretaker's journal, 1921 to 1976. Names filled the pages, hundreds of them. Infant daughter, never named, row 7, stone 3. Charles Greeley, heart failure, row 12. Walter Finch, groundskeeper, row 0. My name, my plot, my grave. If there is a row 0, it isn't marked on any map. It lies beneath their feet. Emma's hand shook as she closed the book and walked to the window, praying she was wrong about what she would see in the backyard. Outside, the fog was rising, curling around the foundation like it meant to climb inside. Through the fog, she could just make out the shape of the gravestones. Her scream brought Blake from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist. He found Emma packing, insisting they had to leave right then, but it was too late. As the fog grew thick like a wet wool blanket, the shapes came with it. Long, pale forms gliding through the trees, too thin to be men, too tall to be women. And the voices began, faint at first, murmured fragments, like wedding guests searching for seats long after the bride and groom had gone. Then the phone rang, 3 shrill pulses, then silence. They searched every table, every drawer, but no phone lay in the cabin. Again it rang, farther away this time, like a game of hide-and-seek. Emma swore it came from beneath them, and she was right. The pantry's trapdoor was nailed shut, but nails are only wood and rust. They gave way with a groan. Down in the crawl space, a coffin-lid crate sat beneath a tangle of roots. On top of it rested a black rotary phone, dusty, waiting. It rang a third time. Blake lifted the receiver. A hiss poured out, thick as grave soil. Then a man's voice spoke, low, hollow, and heavy with rot. "Don't bother running," it said. "The gate's gone. The road's gone. The world you came from has already shut its eyes to you. There is no way out." The line crackled and the voice grew sharper, closer, as though the speaker's mouth pressed right against the other end of the wire. "You belong to me now. Every step you take will only carry you deeper into the grave. The walls will close, the fog will hold you, and the ground will open when I say so. This is my cemetery, and no one leaves it alive." Blake's hand went white around the receiver, but the voice didn't stop. It rose, giddy and furious, a hiss that scraped like fingernails on stone. "Struggle if you want, scream if you want. It only feeds the others. They're waiting for you. They're hungry." Emma staggered back from the pantry, eyes wide, and behind her the front door latch clicked open with an ominous echo. Emma staggered back from the pantry, the receiver slipping from Blake's hand as the hiss still bled out of it, merging with the air of the cabin. The voice didn't stop when the phone hit the crate. Now it filled the rafters, the floorboards, the very breath in her chest. "You will not leave. The door is open, and they are waiting. Step forward. Join them." As if obeying, the front door latch clicked with a hollow snap that echoed through the cottage like a judge's gavel. Blake stood in the doorway, his shoulders rigid, moonlight spilling across him like a shroud. Beyond him stretched the cemetery, each stone slick with fog, each grave swelling with shadows. And from those graves they came, men without eyes, their sockets stitched and dripping. Children with lips sewn tight, their muffled whimpers rattling in the air. Women drifting forward with lilies clutched in skeletal hands, petals brown and reeking of rot. Hands thumped against the walls in polite rhythm. Shadows crawled behind the glass. Mirrors bloomed with faces that weren't theirs. Gray mouths opening and closing, whispering to be let in. Fingers like pale worms wriggled through the cracks in the shutters. Emma screamed for Blake to shut the door, but his scream answered hers. She watched, frozen, as thin arms wrapped around his chest and dragged him across the threshold, his heels furrowing lines in the dust. The fog swallowed him whole, his outline vanishing among the stones. She turned to flee, but the house betrayed her. A dozen hands, cold, damp, merciless, pressed against her back, guiding her forward. The door gaped wide like a waiting mouth, and the voice of the caretaker whispered one last time, riding the wind and the fog alike. The cemetery keeps what it claims. By Sunday evening, the cottage was gone. Nothing remained but moss, silence, and 2 fresh graves, each marked with a heart carved into damp wood. The journal lay open beside them, and in ink that no living hand had touched in 50 years, 2 new names bled dark across the page. Emma, Blake. Once they cross my threshold, the graves decide their fate, and the graves never give anyone back. Don't trouble yourself about Emma and Blake. They're at rest now. Well, rest enough. And I'll be here waiting for the next pair. Someone always answers. Someone always clicks accept. A free weekend in a cozy cottage. It's too sweet to resist. And when they arrive, the surrounding residents will be waiting too, patient in their beds, eager to greet new neighbors. So if you ever stumble across my invitation, if you ever hear of a rustic cabin tucked down a forgotten road in late October, remember this. The dead still keep guest books, and I still know how to write. The season turns. The trees wear crimson and gold, the air grows sharp with frost, and the cottage looks lovely, perched among the leaves like something from a painting. You would never know my cemetery is here, just beneath the roots, waiting for the next souls to sign their names. And I'm already preparing the invitation. Sunday evening will come again, and when it does, my cemetery will grow by 2. And don't worry, if it isn't you this year, it'll be someone else. Next Halloween, the one after that, they always come. Camping with the dead, they thought it was just a cabin. Weathered wood, a stone chimney, a roof sagging with moss. A cozy getaway, tucked deep in the timber where cell signals die and the stars shine bright. The listing called it rustic, secluded, perfect for a weekend in nature. But I remember when that cabin was built. I remember where. They never should have set it on row 9. Back then, the headstones were pulled up, carted off, forgotten by all but me. The graves remained. They always do. I told the builders what lay beneath, but they laughed, said they didn't believe in such things. Well, the dead don't care what you believe. They only care that you disturb them. And every Halloween since, the cabin has called new tenants to its door. This is what happened last year. 5 campers this time. Young, college-aged, all bravado and cheap whiskey. They hauled coolers and sleeping bags inside, kicked at the boards to test the floor, laughed at the echo. Spooky, one said, grinning for his phone. Another hammered a nail in the wall to hang a lantern. They didn't notice the wood bled dust like ash. Night fell quick out there. The wood sealed them in. Fire popped in the hearth, smoke curling sluggish, thick. They told stories, scared each other with half-remembered legends, shouted into the dark for replies. None came. Not yet. Then the noises started. First it was footsteps overhead. Slow, deliberate, heel-toe, heel. They joked about raccoons, though there was no attic. One boy climbed the ladder to the rafters, shining a flashlight into cobwebs. Nothing. Just beams and blackness. Later the walls shifted. At least that's what they thought. Hands began to press from the inside of the wood itself, pale and flat, like the boards were stretched skin. Fingers splayed, nails dragging, leaving gouges in the timber. The campers screamed, then laughed, convincing themselves it was the fire, the wood expanding. They poured more whiskey to drown their nerves, but the floor betrayed them. The creaks came steady, like someone pacing under their feet. Then the ground itself rose, planks bowing upward, dust puffing between the seams. One boy bent low, ear against the floorboards, and swore he heard breathing. Not wind, not shifting soil. Breathing, wet, heavy, slow. By midnight, the cabin was full of faces. They stared through the cracks in the boards. Pale, eyeless, lips pressed against the seams as if they'd been buried alive and were trying to suck air through splinters. The campers ran for the door, but the latch had grown stiff, swollen as if the wood itself refused to let them out. Windows rattled, shadows pressing close, gray mouths blooming across the glass, and the ground kept breathing. The campers stamped, kicked, tried to shout over the sound, but the breathing grew louder, filling the cabin, filling their lungs until they coughed on dirt. One by one they fell silent. One by one the floor sagged beneath them, opened and swallowed them whole. The cabin groaned, sighed, and went still. I came back Sunday evening. By then the cabin had already vanished. That's how it works. By sunrise all that remained was moss, crooked roots, and 5 fresh graves in row 9. The headstones, unmarked but waiting, leaned just enough for me to know where to dig. I scratched their names into my ledger, ink bleeding black as the soil that covered them. That's the pattern. They come, they camp, they vanish, and the row grows longer. I keep warning them. The sign stands plain at the trailhead, no camping beyond the timber line, property of Ashcroft Cemetery, but no one listens. They think it's a joke, a way to keep trespassers out. And every Halloween, New fools follow the cabin's call, dragging their coolers and lanterns right into the waiting earth. So if you ever find yourself lost in the woods and a cabin appears where no map marks one, turn back. Don't strike a match. Don't open the door. Don't breathe the air inside. Because once you do, the dead will breathe it with you. And by Sunday evening, you'll be camping with the rest of them. Carnival of the Dead. Some towns get haunted houses in October. Others light jack-o'-lanterns or hold costume parades. But here we get the carnival. It doesn't come every year. No, it waits. Waits until the fog is heavy, until the ground is restless, until Halloween night falls sharp as a blade. Then the tents rise overnight, bright stripes where yesterday was only weeds and rust. By morning the rides are turning, the music's playing, and the smell of popcorn drifts on the air. Folks say it's a blessing, a tradition, a piece of old magic. But I know better. I remember where they staked their poles, right through the heart of the old cemetery, graves leveled, headstones hauled away like trash. I told them what lay underfoot. I warned them. They laughed. They thought they'd raised a carnival, but what they really did was wake up the dead. And the dead were hungry. The first to turn were the clowns. They shuffled down the midway in baggy costumes, painted grins splitting wide. But when they opened their mouths, no laughter came. Just the scrape of dirt, the caw of crows, the sucking sound of soil closing over a coffin. One bent low over a child and let a cascade of beetles tumble out of its throat into her candy bag. The girl screamed. The clown just grinned wider, teeth long and broken shards of bone, gums black as grave mold. Then the rides began to feed. The carousel horses thrashed, eyes rolling, teeth snapping like wolves. Children clung tight as the poles bent and twisted, drilling down into the floorboards like augers. Screams rose with the music until the horses reared high, splitting open to reveal rib cages stuffed with bones. By the time the carousel stopped, half the riders were gone, swallowed into the turning earth below. The Ferris wheel spun too fast, then too slow, its cars climbing higher than the supports should allow. Couples leaned together, pointing at the stars, until the fog thickened and the wheel carried them out of sight. When the cars came back down, they were empty. Only grave dirt trickled from the seats, leaving dark stains on the ground. The funhouse was worse. Mirrors rippled like water, and faces pressed out from inside. Sunken cheeks, sewn lips, eyes wide and wet with soil. A pack of teenage boys laughed, slapping each other's backs, until their reflections stopped copying them. The glass held them in place, trapped screaming behind their own faces, while their bodies outside froze like mannequins. When the girls with them tried to run, the mirrors opened like doors, and pale hands dragged them through the glass. Even the food stalls turned on them. The popcorn machine rattled, glass fogged, then burst open, spilling not kernels but teeth, yellow and clicking as they rolled across the counter. A man grabbed a handful before he realized, crunching down, his scream wet and muffled as blood ran from his gums. The candy apples oozed thick red, dripping down children's wrists. The cotton candy machine spun spiderwebs instead of sugar, catching flies in its strands before pressing them to the tongues of anyone who dared a taste. And all the while, the circus organ wheezed. The tune dragged, reversed, then shrieked, as if the pipes were being forced to scream. The sound carried through the fog, drowning the cries of the crowd until no one knew what was real. By midnight, the midway was madness. Clowns with rotting jaws chased children into tents that folded like mouths. Skeletons from the shooting gallery targets climbed down, rifles in hand, aiming at the guests who had aimed at them. The barkers shouted louder, their words slurred in dripping soil, selling games no one could win. And the people kept playing, kept laughing, kept screaming. At dawn it was gone. The tents were ash. The rides collapsed into rust and bone. The organ lay silent, its keys black with dried blood. And in the churned soil where the carnival had stood, rows of headstones gleamed wet in the fog. New names carved into fresh stone, carnies, townsfolk, even a child's scrawl etched deep into marble. I watched from my shack at the edge of the lot. I always do. I warned them when they built over the graves, and I've warned them every year since, but no one listens. And every Halloween, the dead get their carnival back. Next year, it'll rise again. The clowns will stagger back onto the midway. The rides will groan, the organ will scream, and the townsfolk will buy their tickets, none the wiser. And when it's over, the cemetery will be bigger by a few dozen names. So if you ever see the tents go up on an empty lot, if you ever hear a wheezing circus organ dragging its tune through the fog, keep walking. Don't buy the popcorn, don't ride the wheel, don't laugh at the clowns. Because this isn't their carnival, it's mine. And when the music stops, the cemetery will be waiting to write your name. You've heard the caretaker's warnings, graves disturbed, names forgotten, dares gone wrong. And every Halloween, the earth opens a little wider to claim the living. The truth is simple. The dead don't sleep. They wait, they watch, and they're always hungry for new neighbors. The gates swing shut, but the dead never rest. They'll be waiting for you next time at Whispers After Dark. Thank you for joining us at Whispers After Dark. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the horrors waiting for you every week from September through October. Check out our Halloween playlist below and explore our channel for more stories that crawl under your skin. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and beware of the Whispers After Dark.